My friends, sometimes life presses us down so hard that we begin to believe the story is over. The failures, the disappointments, the losses, they whisper to us that we will never rise again. But I want to tell you today, in the authority of God's word, that your story is not finished. God is preparing a comeback, and when He moves, it will not be small, it will not be hidden, it will shock everyone who ever thought you would remain in defeat. All through the scriptures, we see this truth. Joseph was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and cast into prison. By all appearances, his life was over. But when God's time came, he was lifted from the prison to the palace, and the very ones who doubted him had to bow before the plan of God. That is what a divine comeback looks like. It is not man's doing, it is God's power. Maybe right now, you feel buried under shame, under failure, under fear. You think your best days are behind you. But hear me, what feels like an ending is often the setting for God's beginning. He has not abandoned you. He has not turned His back on you. He is working in the silence, in the waiting, in the unseen places, preparing something so extraordinary that when it is revealed, it will silence every critic and glorify His name. God specializes in comebacks. The cross itself looked like the end. The world thought it had silenced Jesus. That hope had died, that darkness had won. But on the third day, the stone was rolled away, and the grave was empty. That was the greatest comeback in history, and it shocked the world. If God could bring victory out of the cross, He can bring victory out of your situation. Don't let the voices of doubt tell you it's over. Don't let the weight of your past convince you that you are disqualified. With God, there is always another chapter, always another door, always another chance. And when He brings you out, He will not just restore what you lost. He will lift you higher than you were before. People will see the change, and they will not be able to explain it. That's what makes it a divine comeback. So stand firm in faith. Keep trusting when it feels dark. Keep walking when the path seems unclear, because your comeback is being written by the hand of God, and when it unfolds, it will shock everyone, including you, and all the glory will belong to Him. What often feels like the end is rarely the end in the eyes of God. The moments that appear to close every door, the seasons that feel like final chapters of defeat, are often the very ground on which new beginnings are planted. Endings, as painful and heavy as they may be, are not the final word when God is writing the story. What seems like a conclusion in human sight is often the preparation for something greater, something deeper, something beyond what could have been imagined. In life, there are times when the loss is so sharp that it feels permanent. Relationships break, dreams collapse, opportunities vanish, and the weight of failure makes it hard to breathe. In those moments, it is easy to believe the story is over, that nothing good can emerge from the ashes. But endings in the hands of God are not closures. They are transitions. He uses them as turning points, reshaping the broken pieces into a new design. Consider the way a seed works. To the eye, burying a seed in the ground looks like an ending. It disappears into darkness, covered by soil, cut off from light. To the seed itself, it must feel like death. But within that dark place, something miraculous happens. That burial is not its end. It is the beginning of life. The same is true for the human journey. When life buries you in loss, disappointment, or despair, it is not your end. It is the beginning of something God is preparing to bring forth. Endings often strip away what cannot go with us into the next season. They test patience, break pride, and refine character. When a chapter closes, it is easy to mourn what has been lost, but those endings also remove what would have held back the fullness of the new. The delay, the loss, the heartbreak, all serve a purpose greater than what can be seen in the moment. God does not waste endings. He uses them to prepare the ground for something greater to grow. History is full of stories where endings became beginnings. The prisoner became a ruler. The exile became a leader. The broken became whole. The defeated became victorious. Each story carries the same truth. What looked final was only the setup for what was next. In the same way, personal endings, those private struggles and disappointments, carry hidden beginnings within them. The pain is real, but so is the promise. There is no ending too final, no loss too great, no failure too deep for God to transform into a new beginning. The very moment that feels like a burial can become the soil of resurrection. The very door that closed may be what leads to a greater opportunity. And the very dream that seems destroyed may return in a form stronger than ever before. So when life feels like it has ended, remember that with God, every ending carries the seed of a beginning. It may not be visible yet. It may not be clear. But in the silence, in the waiting, something is being prepared. The story is not over. The page is only turning. And what comes next will reveal that endings are never the final word. They are the start of something greater. The cross stands as the greatest paradox in history. It looked like the ultimate defeat, a moment when hope was crushed, when light was extinguished, and when the world believed that evil had triumphed. As the nails were driven into the wood and the final breath was drawn, it appeared to be the end of a story filled with promise. Those who watched saw only pain and humiliation. The cross represented shame, suffering, and death. To human eyes, it was the final chapter, the closing of every dream and the silencing of every hope. But what the world called an ending was in truth the beginning of the greatest comeback. The cross was not a place of final defeat. It was the very stage where victory was written. The stone that sealed the tomb seemed to close the story forever, yet it was only holding back the miracle for the appointed time. On the third day, when the earth shook and the stone rolled away, the grave stood empty. Death had been defeated, and life had triumphed in a way no one could have imagined. This moment in history serves as a constant reminder that what appears to be the darkest hour is often the doorway to the brightest dawn. Just as the cross became the path to resurrection, the most painful experiences of life can become the birthplace of renewal. What looks like hopelessness can become the very soil of transformation. The cross teaches that no defeat is too great, no loss is too final, and no darkness is too deep for light to break through. The power of the comeback lies in its shock. No one expected the grave to be empty. No one expected victory to rise from such a place of pain. And yet, the most extraordinary triumph came not in spite of the suffering, but through it. The suffering itself became the pathway to glory. That is the lesson carried into every life. that even when everything seems to fall apart, when all appears lost, the possibility of renewal and resurrection remains. This truth changes the way trials are seen. Instead of viewing struggles as permanent defeat, they can be recognized as opportunities for transformation. The same God who turned the cross into the greatest victory is able to turn present struggles into future strength. Every loss can hold within it a greater purpose. Every setback can prepare for a greater rise. And every ending can open the way to a more powerful beginning. The cross is not just a symbol of suffering. It is a monument of hope. It declares to every soul that no failure is final and no grave is permanent. It proclaims that comebacks are not just possible, they are guaranteed when placed in the hands of God. The resurrection was not only for that moment in time, it continues as a promise for every life that feels broken, weary, or defeated. So when life seems to place you at the cross, when hope seems buried and dreams seem sealed behind a stone, remember the truth of the comeback. The cross shows that the darkest night is not the end. The stone will roll away, the light will break through, and what once looked like the greatest defeat will become the greatest victory. Setbacks are some of the hardest moments to endure because they strip away confidence, slow progress, and make the heart question whether forward movement will ever come again. They often feel like punishment or failure, moments that rob hope and leave only frustration behind. Yet, what appears as a setback from the human perspective can actually be a setup from the divine perspective. What feels like delay, denial, or defeat is often the groundwork being laid for something greater. Think of the times when plans fall apart, doors close, or opportunities slip away. In the moment, it can feel like abandonment. The dream seems postponed indefinitely, the progress stalls, and discouragement begins to creep in. But unseen to the eye, a bigger plan is unfolding. The very setback that feels like an obstacle is often redirecting the path toward something better prepared. It is never wasted. It is shaping, refining, and positioning for what is to come. Life offers many illustrations of this truth. A seed must break open underground before it can rise into a tree. Clay must be pressed and molded before it can be shaped into a vessel. Metal must pass through fire before it becomes strong. The same principle holds in human lives. Setbacks are the pressing, the breaking, and the fire that prepare the soul for strength, growth, and purpose. Without the struggle, the rise would not have the same power. When setbacks arrive, it is natural to feel disappointment. But looking closer, many will find that those moments redirected them away from things that would have harmed them or prepared them for doors they never would have imagined. A job loss becomes the path to a better opportunity. A broken relationship creates space for deeper love. A failed plan births creativity that would have remained hidden otherwise. Each setback carries within it a seed of purpose, though it may not be visible at first. The key is to hold faith in the unseen. The delay does not mean denial, and the closed door does not mean the end. Every detour can lead to a destination that is greater than the one originally planned. The heart must learn to trust that there is a setup in the middle of the setback, a design behind what feels like chaos. Patience and perseverance in these seasons build resilience that will sustain the victories yet to come. Setbacks also carry the power to silence pride. They remind us that strength is not in human ability, but in divine timing. They strip away self-reliance and cultivate humility, creating space for something greater to unfold. They test faith, sharpen character, and reveal endurance that cannot be learned in easy seasons. And when the turnaround finally comes, it becomes clear that the struggle was never wasted. It was the setup for something that could not have been reached otherwise. So when life feels delayed, when plans collapse, when progress seems to vanish, remember that the story is not over. The setback is not final. It is positioning you, strengthening you, and preparing you for a comeback so powerful that it will not only lift you, but also astonish those who doubted. The very place that felt like failure will become the stage for a victory that glorifies the one who never wastes pain. Faith is the bridge between the present struggle and the future victory. Without it, challenges can feel overwhelming and setbacks can seem permanent. Faith is not blind optimism or wishful thinking. It is the deep trust that even when nothing looks certain, there is a greater plan at work. It is the assurance that darkness does not have the final word and that every storm eventually gives way to peace. When faith is present, it unlocks the possibility of a comeback that no obstacle can prevent. Life often delivers circumstances that seem impossible to overcome. The weight of financial hardship, the pain of broken relationships, the fear of failure, or the sting of rejection can create a sense of finality. Yet faith whispers that this is not the end. It refuses to allow the present to dictate the future. It lifts the eyes above the circumstance and fixes them on the promise that something greater is ahead. Faith turns despair into hope, weakness into strength, and waiting into preparation. There is power in believing before the evidence appears. The greatest victories are often born in seasons when there was no visible reason to believe. It is faith that keeps walking when the path is unclear, that keeps praying when answers are delayed, and that keeps standing when everything else says to give up. Without faith, the heart grows weary and the journey seems unbearable. With faith, even the heaviest burden becomes possible to carry because it is anchored in trust beyond human strength. Faith also changes perspective. Instead of seeing setbacks as punishment, it sees them as preparation. Instead of interpreting silence as abandonment, it recognizes it as timing. Faith reframes pain into purpose and loss into transformation. The very things that were meant to break you become the stepping stones that lead to the comeback. Faith has the power to turn wounds into wisdom and battles into testimonies. When faith is active, it draws strength in moments of weakness. It enables the heart to believe in a sunrise even while standing in the night. It speaks life over dead dreams and possibility over closed doors. And when faith holds on, the breakthrough eventually comes. The comeback may not arrive in the way expected or in the time desired, but it will come, and when it does, it will bear the unmistakable mark of something greater than human effort. Faith is not passive. It is active trust. It requires courage to believe when others doubt, endurance to keep going when others quit, and humility to surrender control. It may not remove the storm, but it provides peace in the middle of it. And when the comeback arrives, it is faith that made it possible to endure long enough to see it. The truth is simple yet powerful. Faith unlocks the comeback. Without it, the journey feels impossible. With it, every valley becomes a passageway to the mountaintop. Every closed door becomes a redirection, and every ending becomes a new beginning. Faith keeps the heart anchored until the day when the comeback finally unfolds. And when it does, it will leave no doubt that believing was never in vain. Every life carries moments that seem too heavy, too final, too broken to recover from. Yet the message is clear. What looks like the end is never the end when God is involved. He turns endings into beginnings. He transforms setbacks into setups. He takes the cross, the symbol of ultimate defeat, and makes it the greatest victory in history. The same power that raised the stone and emptied the tomb is the same power at work in the middle of personal struggles today. The comeback being prepared will not be small or hidden. It will be so great that it will shock those who doubted, silence the voices of fear, and glorify the one who never abandons his people. The story is not over, no matter how dark the night may seem. With faith, patience, and trust, what feels buried will rise again, stronger and more radiant than before. Hold fast, for the comeback is already in motion. And when it arrives, it will not only restore what was lost, but will also reveal that every tear, every delay, and every battle had a purpose. The victory will not just belong to you. It will shine as a testimony to the world that God always comes through. And when He does, the result is nothing short of miraculous.